Welcome to the Emily Rassam Show, the podcast that proves parenting, business, and home life can all be juggled, just not always gracefully. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share because laughter and maybe chaos is better when it's spread around. Hello, and welcome to the Emily Rassam Show. I'm your host, Emily Rassam. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and share my content if you like what you heard. Today, I am joined by Dr. Miguel De Puigdorfila, and he is a Doctor of Oriental Medicine, designation DOM, and we're going to start off by having him explain what that is for us and give us the differences between that and he just told me an AP designation, which we use here in the state of Florida, and how those differ. So I would love for you to take it away.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Emily. Well, basically, it depends on the state. Doctor of Oriental Medicine is the title of my profession here in Florida and New Mexico, Hawaii as well. Other states just call it a licensed acupuncturist, regardless of the training. However, at a national level, the the National Commission for Acupuncture and Oriental Medicine issues several national boards. In my case, I had to pass 4 national boards before I could start practicing. And then in New Mexico, you have to pass a state board additionally. So it's 5 boards in order to be able to practice. Just an acupuncturist is someone who has not necessarily had Chinese herbal medicine and the deeper aspects of the metabolism without getting into too much detail. You could say it's the difference between a registered nurse, as wonderful as they are, and an MD or a medical doctor. That's basically the difference. Depending on the School of Medicine, it could be between 1.5 and 3 years of studies. So there's a difference.
Yes. And this is on top of your undergraduate, I am assuming.
Yes.
Yes.
I actually used to be, I always joke with people, I used to be a lawyer, but I became a Chinese doctor so I could prick people less painfully. I actually have a law degree, but in the early 2000s, I was disillusioned with that profession, and I decided to become a physician. And I had been studying natural medicine and health since the early mid-80s, and so I decided to make my hobby my new profession, basically.
And so what got you into this hobby in the first place? Then I'm curious because there's always kind of a neat reason I find that people start pursuing something they're passionate about. Can you tell us a little bit about that journey and how you...
Yes, I lived in Puerto Rico for like 30-something years, and my father, myself, 2 of my brothers, and one of my grandfathers were members of the Board of Trustees in an HMO hospital. Since I was very young, I was among doctors, and I even worked as an assistant nurse in the emergency room, basically, and in physical therapy. And I saw the relationship, the personal and the professional relationship between doctors and patients, and that interested me a lot into the healing process. In the emergency room, you would see death, period, and you would see people with severe trauma, car crashes and what have you. That it's an emergency room. That got me interested in healing. As an adult, as I grew up, I also became interested in the more internal aspects of medicine, the emotional aspects. How does the mind, how does the emotion manufacture disease? How the effect that the emotional states have on our health. And because as a lawyer, I would see people going into crisis, called health crisis, during stress processes in the individual cases, or where some evidence came out, the typical movie when something comes out in the movie and everyone goes, well, people die, and they have heart attacks or they have aneurysms. How is that possible? It's just a thought. It's just one thing leads to the other, and then you become interested, and that's it.
I like that. That's a great story and reason why. That prompts me to ask you a little bit about the differences between your practice in medicine and more of a Western approach, and how you view the body and health as a definition of health in general. when you are speaking of traditional Chinese style medicines?
Well, traditional Chinese medicine is medicine. I always tell everyone. It's been practiced for over 9,000 years. The oldest text that is used nowadays, it's the Yellow Emperor's Canon. But that book is a compilation made, if memory doesn't fail, 2005 BC. So it's a compilation of previous knowledge. Chinese medicine evolves from ancient Ayurvedic medicine from India, from the mythical Indo-Aryan empires of South Central Asia. And as the Chinese begin to occupy the land as the ice recedes, they bring with them the knowledge they have. Obviously, they adapt to the new environment, to the new plants, and they bring and perfect the most known, most famous system, which is acupuncture. Chinese medicine has never stopped researching and has never stopped becoming up to date. It's not hocus pocus. It's not hoodoo, EBGBs, it's actual medicine. What we know as the meridian system, we did not understand until the 1960s and 70s that we're talking about the nervous system. So when you talk about the acupuncture meridians, you're talking about different levels of the neurological system, sympathetic, parasympathetic. As we speak, we are discovering that the fascia, that the fine mesh that we have between our muscles and our bones, that's also a network. Well, that is also part of the acupuncture system. So as we speak, every day we make more and more discoveries. The acupuncture meridians are actually physical nerves. It's not fantasy. We have the photographs, 1/7 of a millimeter thick, and we have over 5,000 acupuncture points. Yes, you do have to memorize them all. What do they do, where they are, etc., etc. Each of them is a microscopic bundle of nerves and vessels. Every time you insert a needle in that point, you are eliciting an electrochemical response. That electrochemical response goes straight into your brain. The brain, we use 100% of the brain. It's not true that we only use a given percentage. No, we use 100% of our brain. It's just like a computer. You're not using all of the programs. You're using the Windows, but you're not aware of the programs that are running in order for the Windows to operate, if you wish. So that's what happens when we do acupuncture. Depending on which point combination you use, you're reprogramming your brain. And when you
I love that.
Yeah.
Explanation is good. Good explanation.
It's exactly as the keyboard we all have in our computers. If you hit one keyboard, you get a letter. I mean, if you get a vowel, okay, or a consonant, okay, but to start making sense, you need to hit a couple of keys. And that makes up a word, but then you also need a sentence, and then you need a paragraph. Well, that's what we do with acupuncture. Acupuncture is one therapy within Chinese medicine. It's the most famous in the West, but it's not the only one. And when you combine it with Chinese herbal medicine, I'm also nationally board certified in Chinese herbal medicine. I've seen with my patients, I've seen the immediate response, immediate changes. And we know Chinese herbal medicine, we know, again, how it works. We know the biochemical, we know the Mendel's periodic table elements that work. But in China, they have a different pharmacological criteria. It's just like the Chinese Mandarin language is a language, but it has its own grammar. You do not use English grammar to analyze Mandarin. Similarly, Chinese medicine has its own criteria of evaluation of the same human body.
And so I notice, because my background is actually science and micro and biology and mycology and etc., that when you talk about the herbs, we also have to make note that a lot of the medicines that we take in the form of a pill are made out of those same combinations of different chemicals that we use for those.
That is correct. That is correct. But the difference is that, and if you know that, the difference is in vivo versus in vitro. So if you take a glucose molecule, man-made, it has a different molecular structure, even though you may have 6 carbons, 12 hydrogens, whatever you have on a glucose molecule. But it has a different molecular structure and a different atomic spin than a naturally occurring glucose molecule. Your body is made to assimilate and metabolize the naturally occurring glucose molecule. When you have the same elements, like say ephedrine, hydrogen, nitrogen, naturally occurring in cinnamon or in ephedra or in, mulberry leaves that are medicinal plants, or even oregano or thyme or garlic or onion that are also medicinals. Nature has already combined those elements, living and shining. If you look at a microscope, they're living and shining. They're alive. And so when you assimilate that into your body, you're bringing life and health and life basically back into your metabolism.
And so that makes me think of what type or specialty do you do, or like what type of patients do you see most commonly that you work with? Is there a specialty you have? And then tell me a little bit about the different types of treatments that you do besides acupuncture and herbal medicine. Can you go into those a little bit? And then I will ask some clarifying questions about them.
Okay. Most people come to me for pain. Most people stay with me for internal medicine and psychiatry, psychology. I shouldn't use the word psychiatry, psychology because that is the name of a specialty in medicine. But you do have psychology in Chinese medicine. Today, for example, I had a patient that came to me 2 months ago for back pain, and I have treated her already several times for internal conditions, because that's what happens when the patients realize what you're talking about. The patients realize that this is real medicine, that it goes far deeper than just musculoskeletal pain. Well, they like it. There's very little side effects.
Can you tell us a little bit more about how it's kind of intuitive to me, but like how emotions and the way you feel affect your health and the way your body works, and how it has, I guess I would say, its ability to heal itself, because that's what it's designed to do, is to heal itself.
Yeah. So in order to explain that, we have to realize that we are not our bodies. Our bodies are are a shoe, a boot, an avatar that we are using in order to be able to live in this physical universe. The real us are entities of pure quantic energy, what Christians call the soul, what the Asians call Atman, the Chinese call the Shen. It really doesn't matter. It's the real us, the being of light. So every time there's a thought, there's a spark of energy in a neuron. That spark of energy creates a cascade effect of endocrine reactions in different hormones, enzymes, and glands. Each of the glands is connected to a nerve bundle, and each of the nerve bundles is connected to an organ. For example, everyone understands the sensation of getting butterflies in your belly when you see someone you like or someone you love. But where is that sensation coming from? It's coming from the gut brain. You have 3 times more neurons in your intestinal system that you have in your brain. But why are you having a reaction in your stomach? Well, it comes from the heart, because there's a bunch of connections between the heart and the gastrointestinal system. When you get upset, why do people get upset stomach? Constriction. Those are just momentary reactions. But when you have, like we all have nowadays in our modern society, let's use the example of tension. Everyone has to be apprehensive. Let's say you're crossing the street. You have to be apprehensive when you cross the street. If not, you're going to get run over. That's normal. That's healthy. But when apprehension endures, then it becomes stress, tension. But when that endures, then you begin to have a system overload. Then your cables begin to vibrate with no repose. It's just like a car engine. And then that stress becomes anxiety. But depending on the individual's body, that anxiety then, if it endures, then it turns into panic attacks, or it can turn into depression, depending on the individual, or both in many cases. And how did it start? Tension, stress, warning mechanisms that our body is telling us there's something going on outside that we need to face, something that we need to change, something that we need to work on. Well, life is not perfect. Many times you don't have a chance, or you don't have the power, or you just cannot work on it. So it just builds up. And many of my patients they come for that, to help them bring it down, back down to a stage in which the metabolism can actually cope.
And by metabolism, you're talking about how your body is able to deal with the chronic stress, or to decrease amounts of the chronic overstress.
Correct. So if I may give you another example.
Yes.
Let's say that I tell you a joke, maybe a dad joke, maybe a good joke, Rodney Dangerfield, whatever, and you laugh. But where, where is it coming from? Where's the joke? Everything is in your mind. So the punchline, everything is in your mind. It doesn't exist. But that thought was powerful enough as to elicit a reflex in your diaphragm that we call laughter, you see? So the opposite is true. We can go into every emotion, anger, worry, fear, sadness, pensiveness. Each of these each emotion within the Chinese dynamics is connected to a specific organ system. In the Chinese dynamics, joy is connected to the heart. And the Chinese, it's not the myocardial muscle, but it's the heart system. In metabolic medicine, it's some aspects of the cardiovascular, some aspect of the cardiorespiratory, so on and so forth. So each of the emotions connects to a specific organ system. If that afflictive emotion, let's say anger or worry, if it endures for a long time, that organ, that metabolic system in question is going to be depleted. There's going to be a hypofunction of that organ. The liver is going to have a hypofunction. You're going to have non-alcoholic fatty liver. The kidneys can be hyperfunctioning. You're going to have a poor metabolism of fluids leading to edema. You're going to have adrenal burnout, etc., etc.
And I wanted to clarify here, too, that what he means by hypofunction is low functioning or not functioning to its capacity.
Yeah, exactly.
For those who don't know. And so can you explain, because so I know the Western official definition of health, which is not merely the absence of disease or infirmity, but complete spiritual, mental, and physical well-being. Can you explain to us then more of the Eastern view on the definition of health and what it means to be healthy from that perspective?
Well, actually, the Western definition of health that you just quoted comes from the East, and it's of recent facture. Up until the early East, it was a metabolic perspective. The World Health Organization developed in the late 90s what was known as the 2023 plan. And the 2023 plan was to bring all of the world medical systems into a homogeneous perspective. And so obviously it failed because of the pandemic. But the notion of bringing the spirit, the mind, the emotions into the definition of well-being was brought from the East, thanks to modern mind-body medicine, which has also taken many concepts from the East. Metabolic medicine nowadays, we're talking about what's called the socio-bio immunology. Socio-bioimmunology. What does that mean? That's feng shui. That's classical Chinese feng shui. That's classical Hindu vastu, which is basically, where do you live? How's your environment? Do you live in a swamp? Do you live in a ghetto? Do you live in a healthy place? Do you live in a functional or a dysfunctional family? Are you subject to physical abuse, psycho-emotional abuse? Do you live in a dump, literally, as we all see the pictures of some countries where people live in dumps? What's the quality of your food? What's the quality of your water? What's the quality of everything around you? So that's an objective, not a subjective criteria. And in so thinking, well, that's how we achieve health, when you bring harmony, balance back into the mind, the spirit, the emotions, and the metabolism.
Yes, kind of like the yin and yang principle,
Yes.
or
Yeah.
just for another example. And can you then explain to us more about how it works when you work with a patient, and tell us a little bit about the process? I assume it's a lot longer than the 5-minute visit that we would get at a regular doctor's office. And can you explain a little bit more about that to us and how you work through and try to understand the bigger picture of a problem that your patient may be facing a little bit, and the thinking involved in that?
Well, funny, the word doctor in Latin means teacher. And in many countries in Asia, the doctor is a friend. So when you come to me, I listen to you. Today, one of my patients gave me a hug just because she felt good. And I listened to her, and that's rewarding, because that means that I'm helping. When you come to me, I will start diagnosing you as soon as you come in. That's classical medicine in every country, every epoch. The physician begins to evaluate you as soon as you enter the consult room or the building. The voice, the eyes, the color of the face, the way you move, the way you sit, and then what we call the 10 questions. How are you sleeping? How are you feeling? How are you eating? What are you eating? What's going on in your house? Where does it hurt? Is it better with heat? Is it better with cold? And then with that, obviously, I start to hone down and to skim and to reduce. Needless to say, you've already told me why are you coming for, because if not, it would be too much. But then the last bit would be I would check your pulse. There's 29 Chinese pulses. There's many schools of Chinese pulses, but I mostly use one. It's 29 pulses in 12 positions, and each is giving me something about your metabolism and your different your 12 organs. And then I check your tongue, and that is also telling me what your metabolism is doing. And then I check your eyes. I'm also an iridologist, and that also tells me what your metabolism is doing. And then I clinically analyze that against what you told me in the interview. And then we have a picture of what's going on. And then from that, we obviously, with our medical knowledge, we can determine the best medications and the best acupuncture protocol or massage protocol or whatever has to be done.
And do you also use cupping in your office
Yes.
and
Yeah.
different types of therapies? Can you tell us a little bit about the different types of therapies that you would use and a little bit like a brief overview of how each of them work or the thought behind why you do them, I don't know, for circulation or etc., and which system they work with, just briefly?
Yes. So in classical Chinese, we always use, especially when you have an acute musculoskeletal problem or a cold or just a stomach ache, whatever. We combine acupuncture with cupping, gua sha, which is scraping, and also with sometimes bleeding, not bleeding as you see in the Hollywood movies, just, specific, one droplet here, one droplet there. So let's start with, I already explained about acupuncture. So cupping basically is a suction cup. There's many types of suction cups. You're trying to break any fluid accumulation. When you're doing a massage, you're pressing from the outside in. When you do cupping, you're suctioning from the inside out. So it's a negative pressure. If you have excess fluid accumulation, many patients that come with muscle sprains, when you do cupping, it helps a lot because a muscle sprain is a stiff muscle because of fluid accumulation, so it helps. When you have, depending where you put the cup, you can even have an effect on the organs. So that is also very positive. Gua sha, which is scraping, is used to force additional circulation to whatever part you're doing the scraping on. Let's say that they use it a lot in cosmetics. So let's say that I do
Yes.
scraping in your face. Well, I'm bringing additional circulation to your face, and that brings collagen, it brings blood, nutrients, and in so doing, you can get rid of wrinkles. I was treating a patient with an 85-year-old gentleman. He had the sagging neck, the turkey neck, they call. And so we were working on that, and after 2-3 sessions, he was looking better already, just with the scraping and the other therapies. And then finally, the Chinese medical massage, also known as tuina, which means pushing, pulling, and twisting. Chinese tuina is where modern chiropractics comes from. So it's a combination of hand movements and finger movements for acupressure where you can have similar results to acupuncture.
And let's see, another thing I wanted you to tell us about iridology, since you mentioned that term. Can you just kind of briefly explain what that is? Because you use the term and now we need to know the full definition.
Yeah. Iridology is the use of the iris as a health evaluation and a metabolic evaluation. The eye is the only visible part of the brain. We have over 60 million cases, clinical cases, over almost 200 years of medical experience in terms of how to use the iris to evaluate how the metabolism is working. Because of that experience, we know how to identify bone problems, metabolic issues, glycemic problems, acidity, excess phlegm, gastrointestinal issues, even psychoemotional issues. Because if you look at the iris like a clock with the 12 numbers around, each of the hours has a different body part. And in iridology, we identify specific marks out of clinical experience. We know what mark means what in what part of the body. And so
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then, so you use the term metabolism a lot, but I think most people, when they think of it, they consider metabolism like, okay, I ate a cookie and now my body is going to burn up the cookie as fuel. Can you tell about some of the other metabolic pathways in the body and how those work?
Well, breathing. Breathing is, I myself am addicted to breathing. If I don't breathe, I have this existential crisis myself. Breathing is the most important metabolic process that we have. We are assimilating something, we don't know what it is. Everyone talks about oxygen, but the truth is that oxygen is only 22% of what we breathe. And oxygen is the only gas we know what it does, which is to oxygenate the red blood cells to bring energy to the rest of the body. But that means that 80% of the gases that we take into our lungs, we don't know what they do. I mean, we can speculate, but that's what in yoga, they call it prana. In China, they call it kong qi, which is the heavenly qi. When you breathe, you're bringing into your body huge amounts of energy. That's independent from whatever you eat. When you smell, it's a completely different level. You're assimilating chemicals at a different level in your brain. If you cover your nose and you eat an apple or you eat a pear, you won't know the difference unless you smell it. That's how important it is. But the most important thing is that what we see, what we hear, what we say, what we have told to us goes through exactly the same metabolic pathways as what we eat. So if I may say so, that's what Jesus means when he says, it's not what you put into your mouth that makes you impure. So that's what modern culture has come to accept, that you are, if you constantly if you're constantly feeding yourself visual images or auditive stimulus, good music, good images, harmonious environments, your body is going to metabolize that exactly as peanut allergies, if you wish. So that's why I don't know if it's too complicated, but
No, it's not.
the metabolism is not only food. It's what you hear, it's what you smell, it's what you see, it's the environments into which you hurl yourself into. That is also the metabolism.
So they're all kind of, as you're saying, things that you consume. So like you
Absolutely
take in sounds, you take in smells,
yes,
and those kind of things. It's not just consuming food. It's a whole different animal,
correct,
so to speak.
and that connects with Chinese medicine and with classical Western medicine and with Hindu medicine, in the sense that we can have what we call the 5 elements, and each of the 5 elements has a long list of correspondences, and they are emotions, objects, directions, food items, things you hear, things you eat. Each of those are ruled by a specific electrochemical frequency, for lack of a better term. And each electrochemical frequency, just like the numbers, we have even numbers, odd numbers, but we also have the prime numbers. People forget about those. So some numbers match, some numbers don't match. That's how everything in our life is that way. We have to, without being childish in the sense, without being childish and seeking to have a perfect, rosy life, but we need, in as much as we can, try to lead a harmonious life and something that makes us healthy in every aspect and something that elevates us.
I know you mentioned feng shui earlier. How does that work with your practice? I'm just curious because I know I keep, for example, bugging my husband because I'm like, you have to close all of the water taps and shut the bathroom doors all the time.
Yes.
And those kind of things.
Yes.
So
feng shui,
can you explain that?
Yes. So let me put it to you this way. Matter doesn't exist. Let's start with that. So everything is mind. If an atom is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, the nucleus is the size of a Volkswagen Beetle, the electrons are the size of a pea 85 miles away. So we have more empty space in our bodies, and everything around us has more emptiness than actual physical substance. Why is that relevant? Because all of that emptiness assumes a shape, a form, according to our mind. So why did you put on a dark shirt today? Why did I put on a blue shirt today? Why do you live where you live? Why did you marry your husband? Why did I marry my wife? Everything is feng shui. Everything responds to the projection of the mind. So in the same sense, feng shui is the acupuncture of the spaces. How do we harmonize what's around us outside of our body? That's feng shui. There's many, many levels. It goes very high or very deep depending on how you wish to go. Me and my wife are also feng shui master practitioners, so we can work with that as well. In feng shui, the bathroom is not a good place, and the toilet is not a good place, obviously. So you're flushing wealth. So you need to close the bathroom and you need to close the toilet.
So one of the things I see in feng shui, since you and your wife specialize in that as well, the entryway to your home is very important.
Yes.
And your kitchen, which is always kind of like the central hub of your home because everyone seems to gather there the most. Can you tell us a little bit about those two different parts of your home and why they're very important? And please tell us more.
So each of us, again, everything goes back to energy and the fact that we are beings of pure light. Depending on your religion, you can call it however you wish. Since we live in a Christian country, allegedly, we are all sparks of light emanating from God. But we still have that energy is quantifiable in electronic terms. So because everything in electronic is a frequency, you have harmonious and inharmonious energies. Which is, in feng shui, we call it auspicious and inauspicious. So depending on the moment of your birth, which is when you came out into this world, you have a specific energy pattern. And that specific energy pattern is quantifiable. And because it's quantifiable, let's say that you have an even number or you have an odd number, then there's a completely different auspicious or inauspicious system of directions for you. Depending on the year you were born, depending on the day you were born, everyone is different. But we still have cookie cutter patterns, if you wish. The house is the same. So because each direction is ruled by a different element, and each of the elements rules a different electronic pattern, harmonious or inharmonious with yourself, your house, where your main door faces, is basically the main energy for the house. That's what happens when people move and suddenly everything goes haywire, or they move and everything starts improving immediately. Well, because the house may look nice, but that's not the best house for you. That's not the best direction for you. The same goes for the kitchen. The kitchen is fire and water. But where are your fire and water elements? Your individual fire and water elements. Where is the kitchen place on that house? The problem we have in the West in general is that we have forgotten about that. In the West, we knew that, and we used to call it sacred geometry. In the East Asia, nobody moves a brick without consulting a feng shui master. The governments, the companies, nobody moves a brick without consulting because they know.
Can you tell us a little bit about how the thermodynamics of things you consume affect your body? I see a lot that heat, it's better to drink not very cold beverages or things like that. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
The stomach needs warmth within limits. You're going to burn yourself if you drink boiling water. But the stomach needs warmth and it needs moisture. So when you drink cold water, you're dousing the fire. That's basically it. Cold constricts, so you're going to have a tissue constriction and a capillary constriction. So the blood that you should be using to assimilate the nutrients from your food is not going to be there because you just douse your stomach fire by having a cold drink in the middle of your meal. That's the simplest answer I can give you.
Okay, that was one that I hear a lot. Another thing I would like you to tell us a little bit about is it's kind of an organ people don't think about very often, but the spleen, I hear that term used a lot when I hear about more Eastern medicines.
Yes.
And can you tell us a little bit about where it's located and what it does and how it's used in Eastern medicine?
So when we talk, let's start with so-called modern medicine or metabolic medicine. The spleen is a bundle of vessels and lymphatic ducts. And we know that the spleen is implicated in the creation of new blood, what we call hematopoiesis, at the medulla level inside the femur, where you have the bone marrow. We know that the spleen metabolically is also implicated in the manufacturing of white blood cells, the eosinophils, neutrophils, etc., also at the bone marrow level. However, in the Chinese system, when we talk about the spleen, we're not talking about that spaghetti bundle of vessels and lymphatic ducts. We're talking about an assortment of lymphatic functions, digestive functions, glycemic functions, renal functions even. The spleen takes care of the transportation of fluids throughout the entire metabolism. It is ruled by the earth element, which is the center of everything. It connects to the stomach, hence the digestive system. The spleen wants to be dry, and it has a specific energy. The stomach goes down, and the spleen goes goes around. So if your spleen in the Eastern metabolics, if the spleen is not working, your lymphatic system is not working, your glycemic index is not working. That means that you're going to have cellulite, you're going to have phlegm, you're going to have dampness, you're going to have a pot belly, you're going to have lymphedema, series of issues. Obviously, there's 35, 40 different things. I'm just off the top of my head. That would be the short.
I just hear about, I always see, every time I read something about Eastern
spleen,
medicine, it's in there.
But also the spleen in classical Western medicine has to do with the same as in Eastern medicine, which is worry and pensiveness and depression. So in England, when you talk about the British spleen, oh, that person has a lot of spleen. That means that it's moody, it's melancholic, it's under the weather, winter blues. But in Eastern medicine, the spleen has to do with worry, pensiveness, obfuscation. You're running on the same rut. You can't get out of it. It's like, yes, but no. You're like, he loves me, she loves me not. She loves me, she loves me not. That's the spleen.
Is there a relation to different colors? Because I am just kind of thinking about more of the Indian style Ayurvedic medicines and things. Can you tell us a little bit about that and its differences? Because really in Western medicine, I think of, they paint the walls blue so no one's nervous, and that's about it as far as it comes to color, unless your body has turned white because you have, a concussion, or you're red because you're embarrassed. So can you tell us a little bit about
correct.
that?
Going against, so when you come to me and you have a green face, the green face is toxic. It's a toxic color, and it has to do with the liver. The green is the color of the liver, but when you have a green face, it means that your liver is not working. It means that probably some level of toxemia or intoxication. When you have an ashen face, it means that the skin has no perfusion, so that can take us to the lung or to the spleen. Each of the organs has a different color. The spleen is the color brown because it's the earth element. The lungs are the color white and gold because it's metal. The kidneys are blue and black because it's water, and so on and so forth. You can also use those colors for the exterior, for the house, for the way you dress, but you also use them in diagnosis.
Very interesting. I always ask about colors because they're very relevant in a lot of different I don't know if I want to say spiritual practices. I guess I would say spiritual practices because health is partially a spiritual practice. Yes. I also like to ask the question every time if there was a message that you would like to give to anyone, in your case, maybe health-wise or etc., that you feel very passionate that you might share to someone who's my audience, kind of younger women, probably 25 to 45-ish, etc., that you would like to share like a word of wisdom.
Absolutely. It was my favorite subject in medical school. When I did my other degree, which is natural medicine, my thesis was on somatization. How does the mind manufacture disease? To do that, I had to study the process of conception according to the classical Asian and European medicine. In other words, how do humans come to this world? The female body is the most perfect creation that we know. And the female psyche is the most complicated energy that anyone can find. And it's a difficult thing, and I don't say that pejoratively, because the female body has additional hormones, additional organs, additional nerve endings, additional everything. If you actually knew how you manufacture milk when you're pregnant and you're going to have a baby, it's so beautiful. You're coagulating pure quantic energy through your brain, and you're making that quantic energy, you're coagulating that into milk inside your bodies. How divine is that? How divine it is to give someone the gift of your own genes. I agreed to carry you for 9 months in my body. That's divine, period. And young women nowadays are being told that's bad. That's wrong. The most beautiful thing that you have is to be a woman and to be a righteous woman and to be a mother. And you have the responsibility to bring new humans. And that means that you have to have the best spirit, the best mind, the best body, because your genes are going to be passed on for generations and generations. So I would tell, that's what I tell to every young girl. It's a blessing to be a healthy young woman nowadays with some period.
Yes. Yes, there are a lot of unhealthy young women too.
I could
And
go
I
on for
agree
2
that-
hours on this subject.
I'm like really interested in reading your thesis now. It sounds very interesting because I'm a big nerd. That's my thing. And so I really wanted to say that I very much appreciate you taking your time to speak with a complete stranger today that reached out to you.
My pleasure.
And
I just
I
hope
would
that I
also-
made sense. Thank you for reaching out. I mean, I just want the community, and I just want people to be healthy, but healthy from the inside out. I think that Western medicine is wonderful from the mechanical aspect, but for the last 100 or so years, we have forsaken the most important aspect, which is spiritual health. What makes us healthy is what comes from within, not what comes from without.
That's very profound. I like that. And it's so important to realize that we have to think of a person as their whole package instead of, like I feel as though Western medicine, a lot of time it's stick a Band-Aid on it when there's a leak coming up in your ship and it's about to sink. They're like,
it's very simple. It's very simple. You don't stop being a mother for being a daughter. You don't stop being a professional for being a wife. You don't stop being a citizen for being a churchgoer. You're everything at the same time, depending on what you're doing at that particular moment. Every single person on this planet is still carrying traumas from early childhood, which is why we get triggers. When you get that trigger, you may be 75. You're going back to 5 years old. Whether your mom, your dad, or your brother did this, that, or the other. Again, we are a lot more than we think we are. We're a lot more than a bunch of cells. We're not a clump of cells.
We're very complicated, and we're all kind of in the same boat. I definitely agree with that because we all have issues, and we all have to work through them and learn to live with them. And it's kind of like the Alcoholics Anonymous 12 steps type thing.
I've lived in 6 countries, 7 countries. I used to speak 9 languages. I'm down to 5 because I forgot the other 4 for lack of use.
Yes.
But I can tell you that, and I've studied this since 1976, and we're using books that were written 25,000 years ago in countries that don't exist anymore. And they were analyzing human nature, and they're still relevant. The point is that it doesn't matter the country, the race, the religion. We have the same fears, the same emotions, the same hopes, the same expectations, everything.
That's very beautiful. I love that. We really do. And like at my house, we're a multicultural household as well. And we're really, for our differences, which are very few, we're all the same.
Yeah.
We really are. And it's a testament to why it's important to help people around you feel like they're part of the community, because that's a really big part of health, is like having connections, and good ones, and friends, or people who are more like sisters or brothers. And I always encourage people to set aside your differences because we're all more similar than we think, and we forget that we're all human.
Yes.
And again, I wanted to thank you so much. Thanks for joining me today on the Emily Rassam Show. If you laughed, learned something, or at least didn't roll your eyes too hard, go ahead and like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, keep the coffee strong, your kids alive, and the dreams big.